Support for the Civic SciTV network comes from listeners and viewers like you and organizations such as the Rita Allen Foundation, which invests in transformative ideas in their earliest stages to leverage their growth and promote breakthrough solutions to significant problems. Go to ritaallen.org to learn more.
Mapping the global landscape of civic science by dissecting new insights from researchers, practitioners, and leaders in academia, government, for-profit, and non-profit organizations. This is Questions of the Day with Fanuel Muindi.
All right, welcome back. I am very excited today to be joined by Carrie Kroehler, who is the Associate Director in the Center for Communicating Science at Virginia Tech. Now, if you haven't been following our series, we are looking at training programs in science communication and public engagement. We are talking with their leaders and asking them the hard questions about their program. And in fact, we've created a whole dashboard with all these programs that you can search through and find out who is doing what, where, when, and so forth. So today, I'm very excited to have Carrie on board. Carrie, welcome to the series.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I didn't know there were going to be hard questions, though, so now we're in trouble. He announces that it's hard questions.
Yes, the trouble begins. The trouble begins. Yeah. Now, Carrie, I understand you are a biologist, you're a writer, you've done some few things here. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming the Associate Director of the CCS at Virginia Tech?
Sure, yes. I double majored in communications, writing, English, secondary education, and biology in college, unable to make up my mind which focus to take. And then I got a PhD in biology. And after my PhD, I worked in a water resources research center for several years. And my role there really was doing science communication. I don't know if we had a word for it then, but I was writing publications for the public about their groundwater, about their septic systems, etc. And then I worked freelance, doing mostly writing and editing for a number of years while raising my kids, and got involved with the Center for Communicating Science before it was a center, back in 2012, when our director, Patty Ron, had just developed a graduate course in communicating science for Virginia Tech. And what it lacked was a writing component, and she asked me if I wanted to co-teach with her. There's more to this.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit? Yes, can you tell us a little bit more about the landscape at Virginia Tech around science communication, public engagement? Because you mentioned this, there were some things that were happening. There was a course and the center came on board. What was the landscape like around that formation time?
Yeah, back in 2012, when this graduate course launched, we offered one section a year. And most students took it by stealth, we always say. Their advisors primarily, I think, wanted them in the lab. They did not want them doing other extraneous things. And that has changed dramatically over the dozen years since the course started. We now offer 4 and sometimes 5 sections a year of this class. We've had almost 700 graduate students take it. And people are requiring it in some of their programs, and many advisors are recommending that students take it. So there's been a huge change in, I think, in general in the nation, maybe world, and certainly among graduate students who see that it's really important for them to be able to communicate with people outside of their field.
So you mentioned that there's some requirements within some STEM programs at Virginia Tech. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's something that we kind of haven't seen in other places yet, to this level where you're saying there's a requirement. How is that sort of fused in?
Yeah, there are some programs at Virginia Tech now. One that springs to mind right away is our Biomedical and Veterinary Sciences PhD program. Requires that their students take the Communicating Science course. Our Global Change Center related programs has this and one other that's also a kind of outreach related class. As requirements, students must take one or the other. And that's a huge change from the days when students had to sneak off and take the class in the evening so no one would miss them in the lab.
Yeah, and who advocated for that change? Was it the students, bottom up and top down? Because you mentioned that it was a significant change, right? So what drove it?
Yeah, I think that we see graduate students now sometimes telling us that they've come to Virginia Tech because we have a Center for Communicating Science. So we know that students today really see the importance of being able to take their research further than publishing in a scholarly journal. So I know that students have been very enthusiastic about it. And then their advisors and committee members, I think, see the change in them after they take the communicating science course, because it helps them communicate better to people outside of their field, but it also helps them give better presentations at scholarly conferences. It helps them communicate with their advisors and committee members better. It helps them be better collaborators to learn to communicate effectively.
Yeah, I think we might come back to that because it's such an interesting point. So the center, going back to the center, you have two courses, one graduate level, one undergraduate. Is that correct? Are there other courses that I'm not aware of?
That's what we have right now. We're also right in the midst of beginning to develop a graduate certificate program that would require 12 credits. And it will be related. So at the beginning stages, I mean, we have surveyed graduate students, we have talked to faculty members, and it's going to be around community engagement, collaboration skills, connecting across difference. The subtitle of the Center for Communicating Science is Connecting Across Differences. And so that's going to be a focus of the graduate certificate for sure. And that graduate certificate will probably include some classes that already exist at the university, but we will also be developing some new courses. The undergraduate class is not specifically communicating science. It's called Introduction to Applied Collaborative Techniques. And it really fills that need at universities, well, and in the world, but at universities in particular, students are always put in groups and told to work together on a group project. And we've probably all been there where one student does all the work and everyone else loafs or something like that. This class really focuses on helping students learn to collaborate, to identify their collaboration skills, and what they can add to a group, how to come up with a group agreement, etc. So we use some of the same performing arts-based tools and practices in that course, but it's not specifically about communicating science.
I see. So you keep using the royal we so far. Yeah. Can you tell us about who the we is in the center?
Yes. So we've got a director, Patty Ron, and myself, the associate director. We also have we have an advisory board and a steering committee. And then we have a group of people that we have called faculty fellows so far, who work with the center in various ways, who bring skills and interests that Patty and I may lack. And we also have had a program of post-MFA fellows who come to Virginia Tech for 2 years at a time. They teach that undergraduate class, and they also help the center with our delivery of workshops and intensives. That's something we haven't even gotten into yet. But in addition to teaching the courses, we do a lot of workshops for faculty, for graduate students, for undergrad students, and even for summer camp high school kids who are at Virginia Tech doing, for example, engineering projects. We're delivering communicating science workshops for them.
I see. So are there full-time staff beyond you and Patty?
We are just adding this year 2 new faculty members who will be in the School of Performing Arts, but will also work with the center. And their role is going to be really, they'll be helping with workshops, but they're also going to be helping us expand our research program.
I see. Because I mentioned that because, typically what you've described, there's a lot going on, right?
Yes.
And you're doing so much. And in fact, you're right. We didn't talk about the workshops and the intensives, that you have these group workshops, you have 2-day intensives, individual consultations. How is this all supported economically, actually speaking?
Right. The economic model is always the question. Virginia Tech has a number of institutes at the university level. So they're not associated with colleges and they're not associated with departments. They're above colleges and departments. And 2 of those institutes on campus have been financially supporting the center. And we're really instrumental. The Institute for Society, Culture, and Environment was instrumental in getting us started. And then once the center was underway for a few years, the Fralin Life Sciences Institute got involved and said, we're going to help support you too. This work is really important for graduate students, for faculty, for everyone who's learning. So we've been fortunate enough to have really strong institutional support, and the graduate school supports the course. That's taught through the graduate program. It's not housed in a department or college on campus. It's a graduate school program.
Don't go away. The conversation continues after this special highlight.
Hello, I am here to encourage students to apply to the microgrant program of Research America. This program connects you to a plethora of resources that allow you to conduct civic engagement projects within your university campuses and beyond, connecting to policymakers and the community in finding sustainable and transformative solutions. But it also allows you to connect to other students who, like you, want to exert social change in their communities.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie. I am here with Science Policy Network Detroit. We are homed in Detroit, Michigan, center of Detroit, and affiliated with Wayne State University. And the premise of our activity was to invite local scholars, students that are undergoing research at our university, graduate students, faculty, to come and participate in a science fair. But as I mentioned, this was a science fair with a twist. So the faculty, the researchers, the graduate students were all kind of charged to see whether or not they could demonstrate their science to a group of local high school students in a fun, interactive, and engaging way. So we invited people from different disciplines to demonstrate their science, and we also invited a nearby local high school, a set of STEM interested students to Wayne State's campus, where they could actively go around and engage in this science fair with a twist. And the twist was that they themselves were actually serving as the judges for the science fair.
Yeah, and I think at the end of our conversation, we'll get back to advice for other universities, departments who might be thinking about trying this, because finding the economic model, right, and sustainability is always a challenge.
Yeah. Let me just add one thing to that, and then Patty is in the School of Performing Arts at Virginia Tech, and the support of that school, of this approach of using tools and practices from the arts to in this applied way for helping people with communicating science. That support has been extremely important to the center as well. Okay, I'll go back.
So there's clearly a demand, right? And you mentioned, and this is the point I wanted to go back earlier, you have been engaging students and maybe even faculty, right, about this need. And I'm just curious if you can just tell us a little bit more about what these needs are. How are they articulating the needs, right? I know there's a requirement in there, but what are they telling you, about the needs, and how are you then meeting them? Because it sounds like it is this bi-directional thing. You're not just creating courses and hoping that they will come, you're responding to the needs.
Right, yes. I think that we see people today understanding that they need to be able to talk to policymakers, they need to be able to communicate with community members, we place real emphasis on listening as the first skill of communication, and I think there's a lot of work and movement today in terms of community engagement, not meaning we're gonna tell you about the cool research we do, but in community engagement in terms of what research do you need here in this community, and how can we help you? What problems are you facing? How can we co-create research and opportunities? So policymakers, community engagement kinds of things at that level where it's really listening to people, getting kids excited, about STEM fields. I think people now realize that there are a lot of underrepresented groups missing from STEM fields, and how do we get them involved? We get them involved partially by being good communicators and being in their communities and saying, you can do this, come on, you can be part of this. So all those sorts of needs I think are things that students and faculty both see building their skills as important to meet.
Yeah. Now, Carrie, the dreaded question, impact and evaluation. This is something that has continued to come up in my conversations, and even in our landscape analysis and mapping. It was something that we were looking on websites and trying to understand how centers, initiatives, courses are articulating the impact of their training on the trainees. Could you tell us about the metrics? What are the key guiding questions that are building around your evaluation?
Yeah, when you first announced the dashboard that shows all the programs, you mentioned that, and we said, yeah, we need to work on that. And that is actually one of the things that the two new faculty members that are joining us are going to be working on. So far, we've done a really great job of tracking numbers. So I can say things like nearly 700 graduate students have taken our course. We have interacted with more than 25,000 people over 10 years, blah, blah, blah. We have the numbers. We're collaborating with someone in the statistics department who's been doing some identity, change in identity as a science communicator work with our graduate students around our course. We also have a new faculty member in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences who studies science. So she's a science communication researcher. And so we're going to be collaborating with her. Because I think it's fair to say we've been so busy doing that we are now needing to collaborate with these other folks who know how to do that work and say, what are the specific impacts that this is having? That's why it was so fun to see the interview with Amanda, who has surveyed all those papers where people have looked at that. We do. So our course is entirely experiential learning and then reflecting on that learning. And so all the students have to keep journals and hand journals in. And so we have tons of qualitative research about the changes that they're experiencing. And they love the course, and they definitely feel changed by the course.
And so, in fact, you have a lot of testimonial quotes on your website for the grad course in particular that you've listed on there. And it looks like now you're trying to quantify, right? Kind of looking at other metrics. Is there? I wonder though. I want to push a little bit on this. Is there a metric? And I'm sorry for asking this because sometimes there isn't. But is there a metric that for the center, if you see this thing happening, right? If the needle is moving in this way for this one thing, whatever that may be, then you'd say what you're doing is having an impact or is successful. Is there such a thing?
For sure, the fact that we've grown from one section a year to 4 or 5 is, and until recently, when it became a program requirement for a few programs, that was entirely driven by students telling other students, you need to take this class. So, of the almost 700 students who've taken the class, most of them have taken it because someone said, wow, you got to go take this class. It was really great. So, I think that's a metric worth noticing. Is that the kind of question you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, these are things that, you are the best people to know, right? What is important on the ground and what you're seeing from the courses, what the students are telling you. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've been finding is that it varies from place to place. And that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That these metrics are going to change. So, Virginia Tech has postdocs too. I wonder, has there been an interest from them in participating in your center?
Last summer was our first, not this most recent summer, but summer before that was our first specific interaction with the postdoctoral program. Previous to that, we'd had postdocs occasionally in the course or attending workshops, but last summer we ran a workshop series for I think about 10 postdocs that were part of a presidential postdocs fellows program. And then they gave talks in September at the end of their program. So yeah, we see great potential and really appreciate our collaboration with the director of the postdoc professional development program at Virginia Tech.
I see. So I want to dig in a little bit into the workshops and intensive. I'm assuming this is part of your business model, perhaps, because if I understand correctly, these are paid, right? They're paying you to deliver these workshops and trainings. Could you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I also know the individual consultations. I'm not sure if those are paid or not.
Yeah, that's a general category that we have on our website that means if there's something you need to do and you need to communicate about it, if you have to go give an important talk next week, check in with us and we'll be happy to chat with you. Yes, we do workshops and intensives for outside partners. So last spring we did a 8-part online workshop series for California State at Northridge. It was part of an NIH grant program that they had, and they contracted with us to do those workshops. We, at the end of spring semester, or I guess it was beginning of summer, we did something at Rutgers for a specific lab, and all of the postdocs, graduate students, and undergraduate students in that program. That was part of a national research training grant. Yeah, so we can do things like that and make some money that allows us to do some other things elsewhere, right? moving money around.
It makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense because this is a difficulty, as I mentioned earlier, right? How do you make this sustainable, right? And avoiding these one-off things that are there. So you were recently actually awarded an award. Sorry, I managed to find this on your website. You have been doing science communication for a while as well. So you were recognized with the American Heart Association's first, hopefully I'm saying this right, Roanoke STEM Goes Red Women in STEM Award. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, that was actually a really meaningful award for me because when I was in undergraduate school, there was one female faculty member among all the faculty in chemistry, biology, physics, earth sciences, and math. So there were not a lot of role models. And then when I went to graduate school, there were 2 women in the biology department that I was in. So this program that the Roanoke branch, I guess, of the American Heart Association runs brings girls in high school to some opportunities in Roanoke for them to see. They told me they get to hold a heart in their hands, a real human heart. They get to tour some labs and do some things that let them know that this is an opportunity for them. They could go into STEM research if they wanted to. As part of my work at the center, we've started a program called Girls Launch, which was a graduate student initiative. She came to us and said, hey, can we start this? This was back in 2017, because she had just read research that showed that between the ages of 5 and 6 is when girls start feeling that they're not smart particularly, but if they work hard, they can do things. And this broke this graduate student's heart. So we started an outreach program called Girls Launch, in which we have women researchers visit local kindergartners about once a month to do some science activity with them. And they specifically say, when they go, I'm a scientist, you can be a scientist too. They say that at the beginning and the end of their visit. And then during the pandemic, we got a small internal grant, and we're able to fund 10 women graduate students to make short videos that the schools could use. And now, of course, any school can use if they want to. That's on our YouTube channel, which is the same thing. It's women researchers talking a little bit about something related to their research and then saying, you can be a scientist. So I was pleased to get an award that recognized women in STEM. Thanks for asking about that.
And I think this is part of the, there's been some work around awards in this space as well, right? Because part of your work being a science communicator, right? And so that's great to see. And the work that I'm referring to really spoke to how important those are, right? To support these practitioners that are in this space, right? In academia, non-academic spaces, trying to do this type of work. And so I see when you mentioned that you're launching this certificate, right? Something that students can take, right? And have a thing, right? That says you've gone through an experience, a sort of trainings that is now growing your expertise and so forth. So going back to that, was that something that the students said they wanted to create this certificate, like going deeper into some of the skill sets? Because this course, the graduate course, it's a 1 semester course, right?
Right. Yeah. Let me just jump back to the Women in STEM thing just for 1 minute. Something I learned from the American Heart Association is that heart disease is the #1 killer of women. And one of the reasons we know so little about it is that for so long, all the studies were done on male mice and male humans. So when we get other kinds of people doing research, the way that we approach research changes. And so getting women into research, for example, gets people saying, why don't we ever study the effects of heart disease on women? Hello, right? So it's very important. Yes, we had graduate students finishing the class. Maybe this is another metric, finishing the class and saying, what else can I take? What else can I take? I would love to continue in this. We also have graduate students taking the class who, you mentioned terminology, but maybe that was when we were chatting before we actually started the official thing. But, okay, so we differentiate between our course, Communicating Science, in which we're helping researchers communicate their own work, and science communication, which is a profession, right? So it's journalists, it's documentary makers, etc. But we do have graduate students who finish taking the class and they're in engineering or they're in the College of Natural Resources, and they say, I think when I finish my PhD, I maybe want to go into science communication. That's work that I'm really interested in now. And our certificate program is not going to do that for them, but it is going to provide them with some other related skills that are not included in the 2-credit communicating science course that we currently teach.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about other programs. We were talking with David Wright at Vanderbilt, for example, with his CSET program and the growth that they're seeing there, and the challenges and the way they're making it work, right? And thinking broadly about developing new trainings around science policy, for example. You mentioned earlier about your model, if you will, providing these intensive trainings. It reminds me of the Metcalf Institute as well at the University of Rhode Island, and so there are other centers as well that are doing this. It's just wonderful, right, to see areas where people are borrowing and learning from each other. I'm curious, who is inspiring you all? Who else are you looking out towards as you're doing and building the center?
Oh gosh, there's so much wonderful stuff going on. I mean, we were inspired at the very beginning by the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science, which wasn't even called the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science yet. Patty went to, I think, their first summer institute that they held in 2011, maybe, and I got to spend a week there in 2015. So yeah, they've been a terrific inspiration, and we're part of the Association of Science Communicators, which is a nationwide group that has a very big umbrella, including science communicators and people who teach and train in the communicating science area. So there are lots of Compass, lots of great stuff all over the country with people doing all kinds of interesting things. At North Carolina State, I believe there is some work towards creating a center with, allowing lots of people to collaborate and work together. So yeah, we're trying. I'm sure there's lots we don't know about. There's also lots that we try to pay attention to so that we can learn from other people and send students that way. If somebody says, now I want to be in science communication, okay, or I want to learn to teach in this way or something, then we know who to connect them with.
Yeah. Carrie, where did the time go?
Is our time up? There's so much more to say.
There's so much more to say, and so I clearly we need to keep talking for sure. But I wanted to ask you this question in terms of if we zoom out a bit and look at the landscape from your perch, from where you are at Virginia Tech, and you're looking at the landscape. What do you wish there was more of, for example, that was happening? That would help address some of the pain points that you all are feeling locally.
I wish that every university and every research institute would reward every researcher who wanted to spend time and effort communicating with people outside of their field. I think that is a major weak point so far. We know how people are evaluated for tenure, and it's not usually because they've visited kindergarten classrooms 12 times this year, right? It's because of their teaching and research and service to the university. I think that many people are engaging in this kind of work where they want to connect with communities. They're doing it out of their own hearts, not because their place of employment is rewarding them for it yet. So I'll issue that challenge. It would be great. It would be great if the people who are paying them and granting them tenure and keeping them on in their work would say, yes, the work you're doing is really important.
Well, this is an ongoing conversation, right? And so thank you so much for the time, Carrie. We will sadly stop it there for now, but look forward to having you back very soon.
Great. Thanks so much for your project doing this, Fanuel. It's really great.